This is Minecraft. It's a pretty popular game, you've probably heard of it, and every year I seem to go through a phase where I'm obsessed with the game for 2 weeks. I'm sure I'm not the only one, I'm sure you've probably had that too. Well, that stage recently hit me, and I was obsessed with the game. And I wanted to somehow bring it into this YouTube channel, but I don't do gaming videos. So instead, I decided I'm going to make something from the game. Originally, I wanted to make an iron sword, but I have no idea how to forge, so that was a no-go. So my next best bet was to make it out of wood. Originally I only got a stick and 2 pieces of wood and slammed them together. But it didn't work, so I'm actually going to have to do some real woodwork. So I went and got this plank of wood and drew out a stencil of all the pieces I'm going to need. I then got my handsaw and cut it out. These are all the pieces I'm going to cut out. This first long one is the blade and the handle. I'm going to be making 2 of these, which are the cross guards, and 2 of these, which is the counterweight. The only thing I had to do now was figure out how to cut it all out, which is easier said than done. Originally, I was just going to use a handsaw and cut it all out, but after trying and failing at cutting out one little piece, I realized that was going to take me eternity. So I got my grinder out and decided to use this. Now you may be thinking, don't you cut metal with grinders? Well, yes, that's true, but you can also slap one of these on. This is a sanding disc, and we can just sand all the wood away. I know there are discs you can add on that cuts the wood, but I don't trust them at all, so I'm not going to be using one of those. So I started sanding, but of course that would be way too easy. Something had to go wrong, and that was it wasn't sanding the wood, instead it was burning it. I have no idea why. I think it's because of the grit of sandpaper I was using, so I grabbed my keys, went down to the shops and picked up a new piece. The new piece is 40 grit, while the old one was 120. Switching the discs did work, but it didn't solve the problem. You see, it still took way too long to sand it all away, so that's when I got my hands on one of these. This is my friend's jigsaw. No, I'm not talking about the fun activity you do with your grandparents, I'm talking about the power tool. I've never used a jigsaw before, so the first thing I have to do is figure out how to use it. But reading isn't my forte, so instead I decided to mess around until I figured it out. Oh, also I found this really cool table which winds open, allowing you to cut in the middle of the table. So I'm going to be using that, it's pretty cool. So I started cutting, and this turned a day job into an hour job. It saved me so much time you have no idea. The only thing you have to be careful of is not cutting too far and cutting into the pieces I want. But now since one was done, I just had 4 more to go. Cutting the other 4 out didn't take long at all. Each piece became faster and faster to cut as I got more used to cutting with the tool. And eventually I had all the pieces cut out. And here are all the pieces cut out. Now, the job's not done yet, but you can see it's coming together, so I'm quite happy. Now since all the pieces are cut out, you can see one problem I have. But I'd planned for this problem. The problem is there's this massive gap in between the pieces, and we can't be having that. So to solve this, I'm just going to cut halfway through each piece and sandwich it together to get rid of the gap. To hopefully speed up the process, I went and grabbed a drill piece, and I was going to cut hundreds of little holes and then chisel out again. To make sure I don't drill through the whole piece of wood, I taped off where I wanted to stop drilling. But this had its own problem. The tape I was using wasn't that good and it kept sliding. So that's when I came up with this horrible monstrosity of an idea. I taped a bit of wood to the drill piece. Hopefully this will stop it from moving. And to be fair, it worked. I drilled out a heap of little holes and it was time to go back to chiseling. And it was way easier. It was like cutting through butter and I was flying through it. Until I finished it and realized another problem. This build is just full of problems. You see, the pieces didn't fit perfectly together. I mean, yes, I could have gone back and fixed it up, but also it just didn't look good. So I had to think of something else. My next idea was to scrap the old wood and use this new wood. Once again, getting the jigsaw, I quickly traced out the pieces and cut them all out. Now you may be thinking, we are at the exact same place we were just a moment ago, and you would be right. But I had an idea. The idea was to get the old pieces of wood, cut them up, and fill in the gaps. So I quickly removed all the excess wood I wasn't going to use, and put it all together. But when I put the crossguard together, I noticed it wasn't fitting perfectly. So to solve this issue, I cut this massive ugly chunk out of it. And that worked. Now you may be thinking, oh, that's going to look horrible when it's done. But no, it's going to be covered, so we'll be completely fine and nobody will ever know. Now there is just one thing left to do before painting it and making it look pretty, and that's to glue it all together. After waiting for the glue to dry, it was time to paint it. Now when it comes to painting, there are 4 colours we're going to paint it. Brown, brown, brown and brown. But there was a bit of an issue. The paints were not perfectly matched. I'd say 3 out of the 4 colours were really good, but I painted it anyway. I mean, worst comes to worst, I can always repaint over it. I've never done painting before, and after painting it, I realised why people do it. It's actually really fun and satisfying. Now, since I have very little experience painting, when it came to painting the straight lines, I wasn't the best at it, and I went over a little bit. But that's okay, because later on we'll come back and fix that with a marker. It took a little while to paint, but when I finally finished, I felt like there was something off. One of the colours were just a bit too orange, and I didn't like it, so I had to fix it. Now to fix it, I decided to mix some of the colours together and see what would happen. So I mixed the not so dark brown with the light brown, and I got this colour, which was pretty spot on. So I painted over the orange squares, and I thought it looked pretty good. So I left it to dry, then I got out my marker, redrew the lines, and I called it good. Now time for the reveal. Now I purposely left the back of the sword blank because I wanted to do that little reveal shot, but I will go back and paint that up. The sword turns out really well. I think it looks pretty spot on. It has a good weight to it. It's almost the same sort of weight distribution as a normal sword. The only problem is it's really hard to hold because the handles are square and they're pointing into my hand, but that's how it is in the game, so it's lore accurate. But no, I had a blast building this thing, and I think it turned out really well. It's not perfect, there are a few little errors here and there, like these paint jobs, they weren't perfect. Here it is in comparison to a real sword. It's about the same length, but as you can tell, one is way thicker, and the wood is way heavier. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm trying to make more things from video games. I've got a few ideas, but if you have any, please leave them in the comments below. Lately, I've been getting into making things. I want to try and make crazier and crazier things, so stick around if you like this sort of content. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.